On this episode, we'll discuss practical steps for healthy church operations. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast. Our goal with this podcast is simple, and that is just to have conversations that empower healthy churches. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. I am your host, Kendall Conner, and I first want to say Happy New Year to you. We're so happy to be sharing at the beginning of this 2025 season with you. So happy to have you along for the ride as we dive into more conversations that are empowering healthy churches. And something I'm really excited about as we begin the new year and start to step into this next chapter of the show is that in 2025, I'm going to be having a co-host join me, and that is someone who is no stranger to the podcast. She has been on several times with us before. I'm really excited to welcome Jessica Moore on the podcast with us. What's up, Jess? How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So excited to be here. Excited to be part of this podcast moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And you've been on here not one, but two times before, maybe even three.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? It's at least two, right?
At least two, yeah.
At least two. And you've been able to share before, and you've brought so much wisdom in the time that we've had you on here talking about things like finances and generosity in the church. And so I just know, knowing, working with you at Ministry Brands and seeing all of the ways that you're able to help churches, and honestly, the heart that you have for ministry, I know that you're going to be a great asset to have as we continue to have these conversations. So really excited to have you on board with us.
Yeah, me too.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about you before we jump into our conversation today?
Sure. So I have been at Ministry Brands for 5 years. It'll be 6 years in February, actually, next month. So wow. It's been a minute. And I have worked in different roles, which has been really cool because it allows me to bring different thoughts, ideas, perspective to this role now here in marketing. I have worked in client-facing roles, which was really awesome, and then client experience. So again, both of those are super practical when we're talking to our customers, right, from the marketing side of the house. But on a personal note, I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I've got two big kids. They are 12 and 13, and a husband, and we've got some chickens and a dog and a cat. So just your average American.
Having three boys of my own, I know that just hearing that you have two kids running around is already a lot of a wow to the house. But then you add in the chickens to the mix, and it just gets a little bit crazier, I think. Yeah,
the chickens are definitely outside friends. But yes, it is definitely. I had
no doubt about that. I didn't think that you had them in the house.
Some people do, which is mind blowing to me. I'm like, no, thank you. But I'm not like a bird person. I don't know if you are, if you guys have birds, but I'm not a bird person. So I'm like, I love these chickens. I love the eggs that they produce for us. But they're definitely outside
it's a little
friends.
Distance. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh no, that's awesome. And coming in from Oklahoma, and for those who may not know, I'm in North Carolina, so a little bit of a distance there, even some time difference. So I'm glad that we're able to make it all work because, having you on here to have these conversations is going to be so awesome. So again, welcome and thank you for joining and being a part of it.
Yeah, excited to be here.
That's awesome. Well, look, today is going to be a little bit different. Today's episode is a little bit different than normal. We want to be able to jump in and talk about healthy church operations. And I know that, Jess, this is something that you're passionate about. And really I think the thing that gets me the most excited is whenever we can share practical tips and practical wisdom for different areas of the church. And this kind of comes at a unique time because it's the beginning of the year, right? And we actually have been able to be a part of creating a really cool resource that's called the Healthy Church Operations Assessment. Is that right, Jess?
Healthy Church Assessment. Yeah. And I think to your point, Kendall, it is a great time because January rolls around and people are trying to think about their their health, generally speaking, whether that's financial health, spiritual health, physical health, whatever it is. Usually in January, you kind of take a look back and say, hey, what did we do really well last year in whatever area we're trying to improve in? And what can we do to improve in this coming year? So this assessment has been created by church leaders for church leaders, and it allows your ministry to take a deep, hard look at the 5 pillars of church operations, and we'll talk about those, but it allows you to take a look by asking, or it's not questions really, it's statements. There's I think it's 7 statements per pillar. And so you'll look at these statements, and it'll basically be a scale of like 1 to 5. Like, yes, this is very true at our church, or, ooh, yeah, no, we're not doing so hot in this area. And then that can dictate, how you can grow and continue to be more healthy. So yes, I think it's a super rad tool. And it's just practical, right? So it's not going to be nitty gritty, like, does your church know how to create workflows? It's not like that. It's really operations, right? How does your church operate as an organization? So yeah, I think it's a great resource. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I just want to say from the get-go that this is a free resource, right, that we've created. And this is something that everyone who's listening, no matter if you're a customer of any of the products that Ministry Brands has, this is a free resource that we'll be able to offer. And we'll be able to share the links and everything on that to make sure that it gets into the hands of everybody who wants it. But yeah, it's just a good way. Like you said, it's a good time of the year to kind of, look at how we're doing, assess how we are, what things can we bring improvement to, what are our areas of strength, what are our areas of weakness. And this is a free tool that helps to go along with it. But it does look at these 5 different areas of the church. And that's what we get to talk about today, right?
Yep. Do we want to cover all 5, like just give a overview, or just start diving in? What do you want to do, Kendall?
Let's leave a little bit of mystery to it. I feel like if we go, this might keep everyone locked in just a little bit more. They're going to be.
What are we going to talk about next? I love it. It's great.
No, I think that might be a good way to go about it. So let's try it like that. And so the first pillar of healthy church operations, the first one would be which area, Jess?
Communications and engagement. And what we've done is we're going to sprinkle one of these statements that you would see into this little overview so that you all know kind of what to anticipate, what type of statements we're aligning with here. So the one that we chose for this communications and engagement piece is our internal communications, meetings, emails, memos, intranet sites, etc., equip us with the information we need when we need it, right? So your internal communications as a ministry, as a church, are you getting what you need out of those tools or resources at your ministry? So I'd say that most organizations can use improvement on communication always and forever, right? Especially because channels of communication constantly evolve. But in general, I'd say that your church is probably going to land somewhere from like, it's all right, to we're definitely looking to improve this, right?
Yes.
Because this is just not done perfectly ever, especially, churches are not going to be remote, but like for us here at Ministry Brands, for example, right? Most of our team is remote, and that always causes a little bit of disconnect. So if your church is primarily online campuses, or you have multiple campuses, either nationally or globally, how's that internal communication with your staff? Are your different campuses aligned? So I think that's definitely a good one to evaluate as you're looking at your ministry and how to improve and get healthier.
And so specifically right now in this moment, you're talking about not necessarily does our community know about, different things. It's starting at the very base. Does our staff, does our volunteer team, do our group of pastors know what's going on? Is that kind of the best place to start when it comes to these healthy church operations?
Okay. Yes. I think it's the best place to start. I will say though, this is only one of those statements. So to your point, Kendall, when we say communications and engagement, you will be doing kind of a full evaluation, not just of your internal communication, as you're working through these different statements. But it is I think if you're not aligned internally, right? And if your internal communications are lacking, that's not an awesome foundation to then communicate externally, right? So you definitely want to align your internal communications first. But the assessment will address communication across your entire organization, internal and member facing for sure.
So brand new year on a foundation. I'm trying to get our church. We're trying to make sure that we have our best operations that we've ever had, that we're striving here. A good place to start is when it comes to communications and engagement is making sure that our team, our staff, our group of pastors, the people who are actually leading this thing, right, are all synced up, that we're communicating effectively. It is a good thing to go to check, right, and make sure that, could this be better? Are there any meetings that we need to add? Are we communicating? Do we need to add something like a Slack or a Microsoft Teams or something like that we could we help with that? All of that is at the foundation, right? Yeah. Then beyond that, I would say there's this level of, the members in our church. There's the people who are actually attending on Sunday mornings, who are in small groups and all of these things, making sure that we are communicating effectively to them too. Because if just the leaders know what's going on, it's also important for the people who are in the seats to know what's going on. And I don't know, maybe I just have a little PTSD on this of just thinking about working on a church bulletin and putting all the info in there. And then they say, well, I didn't know about it. I didn't hear about it. What are some different areas that you would say, Jess, are, we got to make sure these areas are right when we're communicating to the people who are in the seats, our members?
Well, so interestingly enough, we had a conversation recently with for another podcast episode. And it was primarily about communication, right? And so I think knowing your people, what is maybe the average age of your congregation? Where are they looking for information? And I think that's important, which leads me to another point about communication is it's not one way, right? So if you have the opportunity to also improve the way that you receive feedback from your congregation and your members, you can create, with our software specifically, you can create an unlimited number of forms. And one of the templates that we have is a survey. And there are other tools for surveys as well. I think ours does a really good job of consolidating all that information. And then you can turn around and plug that into the people module. I mean, it's seamless. So you're not just taking information, but then you can turn around and make it actionable. So that's really cool. But if you're not capturing information back from your congregation, you're missing a big piece of your communication, right?
Wow.
And so finding out where they like to hear about stuff. This could be as simple as a survey here at the beginning of the year. Hey, gang, we're trying to improve the way that we shepherd you. Tell us the best way to get information. Where do you find your information? Were you aware that we had this digital bulletin? How often do you access our social media channels, right? So just taking information back in, and then that data is powerful to help you maybe not get better, but get more targeted or get more effective in your communication for sure.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. And I want to make sure that I say this for anyone who's listening who may not be familiar with ministry brands or the products that we offer. When you are mentioning that, our software does this and the things that we have this, we can have this feature and that kind of thing. We're talking about the products that we offer at Ministry Brands. And so it's definitely worth checking out for any of these things, the features that we mentioned today that come up. But I 100% agree, checking in and seeing what's actually going to work for your church, because, if you have been spending all of your efforts trying to communicate to your church through one avenue, if you're putting all your announcements on TikTok and no one in your church is on TikTok, it's just not going to work, Jess.
Right. Exactly.
And we joke, and it's funny to say something like TikTok, but you it could be the same thing with a paper bulletin. If that's something that just does not work with your particular community, like it's just not going to work. And so I love the idea of trying to do a survey and just finding out like, okay, what's going to work, and leaning into multiple places that, to try to cover different spaces. That's
ask the people. How do the people want to hear it? It's great.
Oh, that's so good. And then beyond that, there's one other element, and that's just getting the word out to the community. And there's ways that you can do that as well. We mentioned social media is a great way to do that, but also just making sure that you are communicating outside the four walls, the things that are happening at your church. And that can be done through several different ways as well, but it needs to be happening in some way, right?
Right. Yeah, I think too, like, this is an old adage, but word of mouth is the best marketing, right? And so I think there is something really cool about empowering your own congregation to share the word about something. So whether that's, providing them with handouts. I mean, I live in the Bible Belt, right, in Tulsa. And so we often have a sweet person. A lot of times it's like teenage age kids or younger come to the door with like a little flyer that like, hey, we're doing this event for our church. We had carolers last night from the church just up the street. And so it was adorable. It was mostly kids. I admittedly was in my room. I was wrapping presents. So I was watching from the Ring camera, but my husband was out there and my son, and they brought up like 4 or 5 bags of candy. The energy was just precious. They were all so like excited to be out there. And it made me smile so big. And I just thought that's a great way to make your church attractive. That community is attractive. These people look joyful. They're having a good time. There's a huge group of them, right? So how are you empowering your congregation to go and make disciples, right? And go and bring people in, into the fold in a way that's like fun and inviting and
come on, accepting. I love an invite card. Come on. Those things are so cheap and effective. You put it right in the hands of your people.
Exactly. Or even just something that they can share on social media too. Yes. So is there a like our church does silly reels on Instagram and a lot of times with the youth. And so, I'll share that on my social media and be like, I'm so thankful that our kids get to be part of this fun community. If you ever want your kid to go, I'm happy to pick them up. Right. So just being able to share, empower your people to share the things that you're doing, because that's more powerful than just a blind mailer, right? Those are good too, but having someone, a face, a relationship behind that invitation is really, really powerful.
Oh, I love that. And there's so many tools available now. I mean, I think about how live streaming is such a big part of the church today, right? Like a lot of times people will check out a church's live stream before they ever come in those doors.
Yes. I think it's like 80%.
Texting, all these different areas, emails, all of them kind of add up to what is communication and engaging people. And I think the important thing is that we are getting the word out about what we're trying to do as a church, right?
Yep.
I want to move forward. What is the second pillar that we need to look at of healthy church operations?
It's a great segue. So community and discipleship. Okay. And the question that I pulled out, or the statement that I pulled out, is our church has the data to design discipleship programs that effectively address specific needs. That is chock full of important buzzwords that we really need to be evaluating.
I want to stop you at data. Some people are going to hear that and they're going to be like, what in the world does data have to do with community or discipleship? So enlighten us.
Yeah. So, the survey is a perfect example, right? The survey is capturing data. It doesn't have to be complicated. We're not even talking about numbers here. Numbers are important. They're also a really good indicator of, how things are going well or not well or whatever, but it's definitely not the number one thing. Also a reminder that data always equals human beings. Like there's
people behind the numbers.
People, right? And with emotions and needs and all the things. So, but unless your church is fairly small, and you have the ability to have conversations with them on a regular basis, and it's really more of like an open forum, which is not the majority of churches, right? Especially not in the Tulsa area. We're talking big churches. So, and then also too, just the reality that as a pastoral staff, even if you're 10 strong, looking at a congregation of thousands of people, it's not realistic to have the level of relational equity with those members to understand their needs. So that's what that data is for. And again, this is where we kind of lean into the potential with a really great tool. So I mentioned earlier using those forms to capture information,
yes,
i.e. data, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of automate what happens with that data. So one of the data points that we have in our people software is groups. And I think community and discipleship works really effectively when you have the right people in community together and the right leadership kind of helping shepherd them along.
Yes.
And our church has different community groups. I mean, we've got literally a flag football team. That's one of our community groups. And there's, 17-year-olds all the way up to 45-year-olds playing football together, which is so rad because there is a level of mentorship opportunity, obviously team building. And boy, when you're playing sports or watching sports, does your true self come out, right? So I think that's a good example of small groups don't necessarily just have to be a group of people talking about their feelings. I think it's important and those groups are necessary. Right. But I'm kind of all over the place here, but utilizing the data that you're capturing, what are your interests? Do you have, are you single or married? Do you have children? Are you an empty nester? The more you know about your congregation, the better you can help them build community and discipleship in a way that speaks to them. That's not to say that everybody needs to fall into one specific bucket, right? There's definitely beauty in older generations pouring into younger, but understanding kind of what the biggest needs are and then being able to use tools to collect the information and then turn that into actionable community and discipleship opportunities. And that really is just a piece of it. That's kind of the inside your church, behind closed doors, not closed doors, but behind the doors within the church, right? Then there's that other community out there in the community piece. And, I can touch on this a little bit just from my own church experience. I've led many a small group and have helped and kind of what that looks like at our church. And something as simple as being able to track attendance and know at what point in the journey, we had 200 people sign up for small groups, but we realized, about halfway through the small group semester, they started dropping off. Attendance may have started at 200 total across all of our groups, but around week 4 or 5, it started looking more like 75 or 100. And we, because we were able to kind of track some of those things and we are paying attention, not just to how many people who signed up, but how many people are actually showing up to these groups. Yeah. We're able to do things like, after week 4 or week 5, we're going to introduce some kind of element that makes it, that kicks that engagement or attendance back up and being able to add things like that. Not only that, but truly tracking discipleship, I feel like is an important thing for churches because, you may have said, we've had this many people turn in cards on Sundays that they've made decisions in their faith. They've taken a next step in their faith or made a sign that they've made a decision for Christ. Right. Yeah. But has anyone actually followed up with them about something like getting baptized? Has anyone followed up with them to get them in a new believers class or any of these things? I feel like those are the elements that are important when we say the word discipleship. What does that look like? And sure, in different churches, it's going to look like different ways, right? But the important thing I feel like to the operations to a church is that we're keeping track of this stuff. We're not just leaving it up to chance that someone is actually going to get discipled and learn how to walk out their faith. Yeah, I think one of my very favorite tools that we offer is within our people software. When someone does, there's some built-in triggers, if you will, like salvation is obviously one of the most important ones.
Sure. Yeah.
And you can do something called scheduling an interaction. So once you've captured that information, there's a piece of automation, right? And automation is our friend. It allows us to be more effective.
Yes.
But it triggers something called an interaction, and you get to decide as a church administrative operational team what we want that interaction to be. But you've got different options. My favorite one is a phone call. And so once, on Sunday afternoon, once we get that tally of folks who've made the decision to ask Christ into their heart, how cool to have someone give them a call and just say, hey, this is a really big deal. We are so stoked for you. We'd love to buy you coffee next time you come in. In the meantime, I'm sure you have some questions. Just wanted to open up this conversation. You don't have to ask any questions today, but as you're working through this stuff, here's so-and-so is on call, ready if you want to grab coffee even sooner. Like, we'd love to talk with you, right? And so it's utilizing the data and the tools. These are sterile words, but it's to create a really intentional interaction and connection so that nobody slips through the cracks. Because that's the most challenging part of having a growing church is... Does everybody feel seen? Are we making sure that people feel seen when they're coming in for the first time or when they are making those big life choices? And some people don't want to be seen, and that's okay. But even reminding them that God sees them, right? Like, that's important too. So, this is obviously, I'm excited about all this stuff, but community and discipleship is so important, especially after that silly pandemic that we had, and just realizing the mental health drop of not being in community and not having discipleship. It is literally life-changing. So it's definitely something to evaluate as you're going into next year, how you can continue to improve.
It's definitely an important part of church operations and just the church. Come on. The heart of the church is in helping people become better disciples, better followers of Jesus, and giving that sense of community. So love that. I'm going to take number 3 if I can. I want to, since you've gotten to tell the first 2, but the third pillar of healthy church operations that we want to touch on today is one that I'm really passionate about, and that is just staff and volunteer effectiveness. Is your staff, are your team of volunteers, are they thriving? Are they effective in what they're doing? And kind of the one of the metrics that we use on the assessment for determining that is, would you say that your church provides opportunities for growth and development for your volunteers and your staff? And I think that's just such an important thing, because I work a lot and I volunteer at our church, and I work a lot with our team. And so a lot of times on Sunday mornings, if you walk into our church, you'll catch me in a big circle with, 50 or 60 volunteers all staring at me. And I get to be that guy who looks them in the eye and encourages them and motivates them as they're about to step into whatever role they're serving in that morning, whether it be, leading worship or leading kids or, whatever that may be that morning. And I look in their eyes, Jess, and they're important to me at our church. Right. And so I would say for every church, as we're starting a new year, right, it is an important thing to take a step back and say, like, are we serving the people who are serving at our church? Right. And great ways that you can do that is just investing in them, pouring in them, even if it's something, the idea that I just presented that we do on Sunday mornings, that may be a foreign concept to some churches, right? Like, they don't take a moment to kind of huddle everybody up.
Right.
That's an easy way. We do that every single Sunday at our ministry, just to try to motivate them. And we have smaller huddles with each individual team where we say, that's where we get to do things like pray for them. What are you guys going through? Almost like a small group in a way. So our kids team will huddle together on a Sunday morning before they go, and they do all the amazing things that they do. Or the production team will huddle up, and that's where they get to spend that community time. But pouring into them and making sure that they have the things that they need to do their job correctly, right? Is such an important thing. I know you have probably a lot to say on this subject as well.
Just 2 things. One is never underestimate the power of a good meal for your people. Okay. So our church does, like, I think we used to serve in the preschool with the preschoolers, and we've had to kind of shift gears, but, First of all, I loved it. They're so candid and so funny. So if you're looking for a fun, hilarious place to serve, preschoolers are where it's at. Yes. You find out so much about the people at your church. Moms and dads, beware of what your children are saying. But we would have, I think at least once a month, they would have this big, huge breakfast.
Yes.
Kind of behind in near the offices where volunteers could go and get fed before they jumped in. And that does two things. One, that you've got happy leaders because they've got full bellies, but two, it provides a place for them to build their own kind of community, right? Mm-hmm. So while you're eating and fellowshipping, there's a reason why Jesus ate with everybody he wanted to connect with. There's something really powerful there. So you're building relationship with the other people that you're serving with, which causes them to be more sticky. I'm going to use a business word, but it's going to cause them to want to stay. They want to stay involved somewhere where they feel like they belong. So that's number one is feed your people fairly regularly. It's really important and they will connect. The other thing is listen to your people. So our church would have, once a quarter, they would feed us. So they would invite us, have this big volunteer dinner. They would do like these silly awards, like, almost like superlatives. Yeah. And so we would do that. And then they would allow us to break up kind of into our age group. So we would go with the rest of the preschool parents or volunteers, and we would kind of give some feedback like, hey, what's working well, what's not? And then they would implement the changes, right? And so if we would say, it is really difficult for us to do a bathroom break with all of these crazy kids before we sit down for worship, can we consider just going back into our classrooms and then taking them a couple at a time? That would work better for us. And be like, yes, that's a great plan. We love it. Or, we talked about, we were kind of building and expanding. And so that was another opportunity to say, as we have this opportunity to physically grow our building, what are some things that you all would find valuable? And so feeling heard, like,
yes.
Listen to your people. They are the ones in and out doing this stuff. Like you can set up processes all day if you are the operational person, but they're the ones actually doing it. And so again, survey or invite them in for food and then sit and have a conversation, but allowing that organic, like ownership of what they're doing is really powerful too. So food and feedback are really kind of my big ones on this one.
I feel like that. So that was two F's. I feel like we need like a third F to keep that going.
Fellowship,
maybe. I don't know. And someone may be listening to this today and think, okay, well, I don't have the budget to feed all of our volunteers, or I don't have the time to do that. I would even just say, just start where you are. Yeah. Small gestures go a long way. And even if you said, okay, we got to get everybody together on a Zoom call during, once a month or once a quarter or something like that. That would go, that's better than not having anything at all, right? You need a place for those people to give feedback and just to pour into them, right? Like we want people to grow, and we get, honestly, as leaders, we get upset when they don't grow. But you have to take a step back and look at yourself and say like, okay, well, are we feeding them? Not just feeding their bellies, but feeding them as leaders. And so, no, I think that's great advice. So we've talked about 3. Number 4, what is the 4th pillar of healthy church operations that we like to look at, Jess?
So finances and stewardship, and this is always a little bit uncomfy, and I can appreciate that, but it's important, right? So you've got to keep your doors open, and you are planted where you are for a reason, and so God will continue to bring the financial support that you need, but there's action there, right? So we can't just sit back and say, God, I need $1 million. There has to be some action to that ask, right? And
I've made that prayer. I'm just going to be honest. I've made that prayer.
Me too, God, Kendall. Please, I'm still waiting.
Can I just get that $1 million,
Yes. Okay.
Just in case,
Exactly. I mean, it's worth asking, right? But yeah, no, this is definitely a very, very important part of church operations. And we joke about asking for money, but really it's so much more than that. It's what are you doing with the finances that you do have, right? So the statement that we pulled from the assessment for this one is our financial reporting and budget is accurate.
It's pretty important.
It is important. And I'll tell you this much as my husband and I, his name is Jeff. And if I'm going to be on here a lot, we're just going to be friends. Jeff is It's Jeff and Jess. So Jeff is the budget police in our house. And that's great. I really appreciate that. And I'm not opposed to a budget. But
Jeff's got it down.
Jeff's got it down. I will say that no matter how much we try, right, it's never 100% accurate. And even though we try to anticipate everything, there are things that pop up from month to month that we didn't plan for, right? Sure. And so the same is going to be true at your church. It really is you can never fully predict kind of what's going to happen or what your needs will be or what your community's needs will be. And so just being prepared for that is a really important part of stewardship. And so I think not shying away from obviously collecting tithes and offerings, but also there's some other pieces to this that if you've ever listened to me on a webinar or the 2 podcasts that I did, you know that this is my soapbox. Financial transparency builds so much trust with your congregation, right? And so them understanding what happens to my money when I give it to the church. And then 2, just like, what are the basic needs? What do we need to keep the lights on? What do we need to serve our community? If there's a goal in mind, then that's really powerful too. People have something to look at and track to and understand what the need is, what the deficit is. And so I think, this could go in 100 different directions, and we've got a few bullet points here. So in general, I think anticipating needs as best you can, having some margin to be able to either react to financial needs or anticipate blessing people outside of your regular contribution, your regular support. And then being transparent about where those funds are going. And that doesn't mean you have to share salaries or anything like that. It's just kind of you don't have to dig into the nitty gritty. But
you can give some pillars. Still our word from today's episode, but like categories, rather than breaking down each individual transaction, but just giving an idea, some level of an idea of where the money is going is better than leaving it to mystery, right?
Exactly. Yes. And in fact, I think one really cool way to do this well is opening a door for knowledge if people want it, right? So if this isn't a Sunday morning announcement, like we need this much money, or this is how much we spend on electric, I don't know, whatever. Right. It doesn't have to be a Sunday morning thing. I think if you allow for that conversation to happen. So if there is a financial stewardship board in some capacity at your church or your ministry, and you guys decide once a month or once a quarter, we will host a financial stewardship class where you can inform the congregation about what the needs of the church are, because we've got some of those people that are like, I need to understand this.
Yeah, they want to know.
And that's great, right? And they want those numbers and they want to understand there's a level of accountability there. That's great. And so if you open up those doors to have a course or a class that talks about what the needs of the church are, and then also turning around and saying, biblically, here's our responsibility, and here's why you tithe, with even some testimonies of people who have shifted their giving and what that's done for them in their life and how they've seen God's faithfulness through that. But just having that, it needs to be a part of your culture, right? Financial stewardship needs to be a part of your culture. Generosity needs to be a part of your culture. And so with that comes the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think that that's okay. I think that's really normal. Any other business has to operate with this level of accountability. And just because we are a church, doesn't mean that we should be omitted from those conversations. So I think that that's really important. And then, Kendall, do you mind if I touch on just kind of how you facilitate giving at your church?
Go for it. Okay. Because I think that's going to be a necessary part too. It's the new year, right? Making sure that we have those elements covered as well.
Yeah. So kind of that was part one, is that transparency piece, the accountability on the church, the cultural generosity at the church. But that just really practically speaking, how are you facilitating giving at your church? How often do you talk about giving? Is it easy to give?
Come on,
yes. Is it easy to give, both emotionally and physically? Like physically in this, like transactionally, right? Is it practical? Is it easy? But also, is it easy because you know what's happening with that money, and it's a part of your culture, and you trust that God has made amazing promises about generosity and his faithfulness. And so it should be both emotionally easy, and then also practically easy too. Yeah. And so, depending, there's so many tools out there for digital generosity these days. Obviously, you should always allow people to give with cash and check and just whatever form of obedience that looks like, invite it. But we recently in our giving platform introduced digital wallet capabilities kind of one at a time, between Apple Pay, Venmo, and PayPal. And we have seen a massive increase in first-time givers. So that means that when someone comes to the church for the first time, the ease and trust is not the right word, but like security trust maybe of giving through one of those platforms has made it physically easy for them to give. So much so that I think we saw, like, depending on which platform it was, like up to 60% increase on first-time gifts. That's crazy. So people coming into your church,
convenient, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think about how much convenience plays into. I mean, of course, just got done with a ton of Christmas shopping, right? I look for those digital giving options.
Me too. Yeah.
I could go in and manually enter my credit card, but sometimes I even I don't love the idea of doing that, especially when ordering from different websites, maybe that I've never used before. We're talking about first time givers here. Being able to go in and use something like a PayPal or a Venmo or something like that, it brings an added level of safety, right?
It does. And it introduces the ease of giving to a whole other generation. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if you have younger congregants at your church, I mean, I'd say even like, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but Anyway,
we don't have to jump through there.
Younger than me, a little tiny bit younger than me, is probably using digital wallets, right? And so, I think it's noteworthy. I mean, it's noteworthy. And as we kind of rolled these features out, we had so much incredible feedback from our clients. I know personally, it's not a normal part of my job, but because of my roles before that I did, client facing, I had multiple churches reach out to me directly and say, "Hey, I want Venmo. I want PayPal. Can you help me?" Yes. And I was able to help them. But people want it. Our organizations, churches want it. And here's the other thing too, is that the generosity landscape is competitive. I'm just going to say it. And so, nonprofits at this point in time, most of them are accepting these digital wallets. And so, I think it's important to, if you haven't already considered it, definitely consider it. If your giving platform doesn't facilitate those types of gifts, take a look at ours. It's wonderful. But definitely need to be prepared to do that.
I think the important thing on that is just, we know that people are gonna do what's easiest, what's the simplest, what do they understand the best, and you just want to make sure that you have the right things in place when the time does come for them to give. And so I think that's great wisdom, especially starting a new year. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Making sure that you have the tools right in place. Maybe you've been dragging your feet a little bit, saying like, okay, well, we'll get to that one day. But I think it's important to have those things in place before people are beating down your door for them, right? Like having those in place, because they may never ask. They may just not give at all, or they may give to, the charity that they see on social media, right? That's where they may do their charitable giving.
Well, yeah. And just one more like practical, and this just popped into my head, Kendall, sorry to interrupt you. But one other thought too is like on Sunday morning when there is the opportunity to give and I'm emotionally moved to give for whatever reason. And I sit down and I pull up your giving form and then I see that I have to put in my card. But now we've moved on. Worship started again. Everyone's standing up. I'm fumbling around my purse for my credit card or my card. I feel like there's just this lack of ease to your point, but just efficiency. Like, oh, great, there's Google Pay, 2 taps and I'm done. And I can stand up and worship with everybody else and not look like I'm looking for gum or something. So I think too, there's just an ease and efficiency to that just matches the culture where we're at. So
makes
that's
so
my last little bit on finances.
No, I knew, Jess, I knew you were going to be passionate about that one. So that's to be expected. All right. I want to recap really quickly before we jump into number 5. So the 5 pillars of the healthy church operations, the ones that we've gone through. Number 1 has been having healthy communications and engagement. Mm-hmm. Number 2 has been community and discipleship. Number 3 has been staff and volunteer effectiveness. And number 4 has been finances and stewardship. And then to bring it home today, number 5, the fifth area of having a healthy church that we believe is the area of safety. And this is a big one, because I know that safety is a big deal for churches, because we know that if people are going to be able to come and be able to relax and trust enough for them to open their hearts, they've got to know that they're in a safe place. Yeah. They've got to know that this is a place that I can bring my family. This is a place that I can bring, that I can come and invite people to. It's a big deal. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%, especially as a parent. I think it's a critical piece. And I think this is something that, has sometimes been a catalyst for people to be so hurt by the church. And so it's just vigilance, right? We're staying ahead of issues. And through the tools that we have and offer, it's just so easy to automate those background checks to be happening. You don't necessarily need to have uncomfortable conversations. It's just, it is part of the onboarding process as you're bringing in volunteers. So I think it is absolutely critical, no matter where they're serving, even if it's not necessarily with kids. I think if you've got someone that's representing your church in a leadership capacity, there's a level of accountability that is required there, just to understand kind of where they're coming from. And, and two, it's a great ministry opportunity too. Like, if whatever those background checks find or whatever, if there's need for deeper conversation or more discipleship or, guidance and correction and repentance, like that is important too, right? We can't just say, oh, you don't qualify. No. We're going to love you through it. How can we help shepherd you, right? This is an opportunity for you right now, but here's why. And we want to help work through that, right? It's super important. And
even beyond that, right? There's other areas of safety as well. I mean, I know something that is such a critical thing at our church has been our check-in system and our kids ministry, right? Having people, when our kids come in, we have a whole process set up. And as a parent, it makes me feel like, okay, my kids are going to be safe when I get them in this area. I can go worship and, listen to the message without having to worry about them, because, crazy times, right? There's constant concern as a parent. I mean, we see different things in the news all the time.
Right.
This is an elevated time to make sure that our kids are extra safe, that they're checked in, that there is a process that is there. We even went as far as our church right now is working on building up a safety team that can be just dedicated to being able to provide an extra level of security to our church. So that's a big deal. I know it's important, not just to parents, but really to everybody who attends the church.
For sure. I mean, you're taking responsibility as a ministry. And so, what are you doing? And again, transparency, right? That's great. How are you then communicating out to parents that this is what we do? This is how we qualify our leaders. These doors get locked when service starts, I think it's a huge deal making sure that, they'll be able to drop off their kids are getting fed, scripture or just understanding and knowing how much Jesus loves them. And then they're not going to be able to leave with anybody else, right?
Right.
Until mom and dad come to get them and you match those tags or whatever.
Right. Got to have that name tag.
Yeah. It is. I think it's a big deal, and it does. It just breeds peace of mind knowing that, they're going to be safe while they're there, and they're going to be safe when they get picked up. I think it's great.
That's right. Oh, this has been a great conversation today, and I know that we're getting close to time. I just want to go back one more time through the areas of what we think are the 5 pillars of healthy church operations. Again, communications and engagement. Number 2 was community and discipleship. Number 3, staff and volunteer effectiveness. 4, finances and stewardship. And then number 5, we brought it home with safety. I just want to encourage everyone who's listening today, every ministry leader, every pastor, that, it's a brand new year, that this is a time when, maybe there's one of these areas or multiple of these areas where you feel like, okay, that's something that we need to improve on. I just want to encourage you and let you know now is the best time, to make it count, to make improvements, to try to say, okay, let's see what we can do. And we really, again, we shared at the beginning of this episode that we have a new resource to help you with that. It is 100% free. We want to give that to you. It's our gift to you. It's something that our team here at Ministry Brands has worked on, just to be able to help you, to help assess, okay, are these areas of my church as good as they need to be in 2025, and to help you evaluate those. And so we're going to link that up in the show notes. And so you can download that, again, 100% free. You can check that out and just take that quiz and go through those questions and evaluate how you're doing in those areas. And as you do, I think you're going to learn what areas that you need to kind of put some focus on as you do this year. And so we also want to share, Jess, do you want to tell them about the ebook that we have available?
I was going to say, actually, we really are coming to you with two resources. So one is the assessment, and then two is the Healthy Church Operations ebook. This has been around for, I think, definitely a year, but we've kind of revisited it, and it's been freshened up.
Right? It's a big ebook.
It is so great. It's very thought through. And again, I just want to reiterate that so many of the people that work here at Ministry Brands are leaders in their church, are volunteers in their church. Like there is real people that work here that are speaking into this as experts for all intents and purposes, because they have been, pastors at some point in their life, Kendall, for example, or volunteers at their church for me. So please hear our hearts. Like these are tools that you should use because we know that they are important and valuable to you. So the ebook covers all of these pillars that we talked about. So as you're working through your assessment, two things you should be thinking about in areas that you're weak. One, is there some tool that can help me do this more efficiently?
Yes. Sure.
But then two, as you're looking at the ebook, those are more thought leadership applications, right? So what are some concepts or ideas that I can introduce to improve this area? So you've got both parts of that there. Yes. So assess yourself. Even if you're going into 2021, you're like, we already had this conversation. We know what to do. Y'all, it is a free assessment. It will take you 5 minutes. Just take it so that you know, right? As an organization. Also, it's a great alignment piece. So if you say, listen, team, we're not going to be sitting in the same room. We're not going to even talk about it. I need the worship team to take this, worship pastor leadership to take this. I need our hosting team to take this. Everybody take this assessment and let's see where we're misaligned, for example, right? So take the assessment and then definitely check out the ebook. So also a free resource. We'll capture a little bit of contact info from you so that we can deliver that to your inbox. But it is a wonderful resource.
Well, and it's a good read for the new year, right? Double check and kind of see what, different folks and ministry leaders are saying has worked in their churches and things like that, and what goes into that book. Again, it's a huge ebook. It's a great read, and it just kind of touches on many different topics. It's something you can share with your team. It's a good one. So that's two great resources that you can find. We'll link those up in the show notes. And overall today, I mean, it has been really good just to talk through these different things today. Jess, thank you again. I'm so excited to have you on the show as we move forward. That's going to be really exciting. And I just want to, say to everyone who's been listening today, thank you for joining us, for being with us on this journey. We love having these conversations that, can help to inspire healthy churches everywhere. And so what we would ask from you today is, if this has been valuable to you, to share this with somebody. Maybe you share this episode or share one of these resources that we've mentioned. Share with other ministry leaders that share with folks in your church. Just help us to get the word out about this podcast, because it goes a long way. We want to get this in the ears of as many ministry leaders as possible. And so every review that you leave, or every follow on the podcast, every comment on YouTube, all of those things just helps us to get the word out about this and to be able to serve more and more leaders everywhere. So thank you for any sharing that you can do. We really appreciate that. And from all of us here at the Church Leadership Lab podcast, we will see you next time.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple-to-use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.